Restoring Men in History, historic moment, and you're getting a lot of these historic moments this year. Bobby Kennedy, not just endorsing Trump, but aligning with him, campaigning with him, coming on board for the transition team, etc., is an enormous and historic event. I still remember what the Kennedys meant to people that I've talked to when I've asked them questions. Where were you when Kennedy died and was shot? People remember that. They remember where they were, like we remember for the Trump assassination attempt that we're going to remember in decades in the future. So you men can learn a lot from Bobby Kennedy. What can you learn from him? He has a big why. He wants to have an impact. We say have a larger purpose. Men, you can have a larger purpose. Follow and look at Bobby Kennedy and what he's done here. A lot of good lessons from his speech that Friday that he endorsed and came on the Trump campaign. This is a lot. There's a lot in here about Bobby Kennedy and Trump. And what can you men learn from it? If you like this message, please like, subscribe, and comment. We would appreciate that. This is a great man. You can take a look at this Patriot speech, which we're going to do probably in 3 parts, because this is a magnificent speech, and we're going to go through some of it, not all of it, but we'll probably break it into 3 parts. But this is a man who put country before party. Like George Washington when there were no parties, and George Washington said parties would be destructive. Bobby Kennedy, the legacy, and I don't think this will translate. My grand-aunt remembered Kennedy. My father knew where he was. People knew where they were when Kennedy died. So a Kennedy like Bobby Kennedy, his uncle, of course, was the president, JFK. His father, of course, prominent in the Democratic Party. This is an enormous deal. And what he called out was the corruption of the Democratic Party. How they, quote, talk about democracy, but don't even mean it. And of course they didn't, right? They crowned Kamala after they wouldn't let Kennedy into the primary. And he's not a bitter man. He's a man who cares about his country. This is a man, and this is why you men can learn so much from him. They attacked him with lawfare, but he kept going. They didn't want him to run against Joe Biden, who was in cognitive decline, and everybody knew it. But the media lied and propped him up. And they wouldn't let Bobby Kennedy run against him. Then, sidestepping Bobby Kennedy, who was the only one who had declared, they just gave it to Kamala and crowned her. She had not won a state in the last election, by the way. 2020 primary, she won no states. 0. When she ran for president, she won 0 states. 0 delegates, I believe. But they just hand it to Kamala. They crown her. But then they want to pretend and use this word democracy. We are a republic, of course. When they speak of it, they almost talk like they want a pure democracy, 51% rules, especially when they talk about the Electoral College. Oh, if whoever gets the popular vote, right? They've talked about the popular vote not having an Electoral College. But they don't even have a primary. Not for Joe, not for Kamala. It's a big deal, and Bobby Kennedy saw it. And you should be concerned, and we should all be concerned. This is the way they want to go. Of course, there will be fraud. Look what they just did to their own party person. A Kennedy, a legacy, Camelot, the Kennedys, and everybody remembers them, and they threw him under the bus. Why? Because they had picked their guy and then their girl. They picked Joe, then they picked Kamala. But he was not putting himself first or country first. And here's the great point for you men I want to learn. You have a big why and you're putting your country first, then you can compromise, right? What did he say? He's going to get something done with Trump. They may not agree on everything. This is unity. This is men coming together, and some people have mentioned Team of Rivals, that book. You can disagree on some issues in America, and it's funny. Now, Trump he's not the establishment guy. Kennedy's now not the establishment guy. They both were in and around the establishment, right? But Trump was never a senator or a governor or a true Republican. He wasn't in that establishment faction, but he was around it and knew them all and in it in that way, but he wasn't in politics his whole life. But Bobby Kennedy was truly worried about the direction of the country like Trump was. So he sacrificed. And before we take a look, you've got to have a big why. And why are you doing things? For a purpose, and we hope a purpose larger than yourself. Bobby Kennedy is doing for a purpose larger than himself, for country. Like George Washington before him, country first. Ideas also. Bobby Kennedy is a man of ideas, and you can see in the depth of the speech, he gives you whys and ideas and what he's trying to accomplish. He's not just trying to run for position and title. He was trying to run to have an impact, make a difference, and that's what we want you men to do. Have an impact. Have a big why. It will help you when you reach all the adverse situations that you're going to go through when you're starting a business. By the way, this can be applied to starting a business. This can be applied to starting anything in life. If you are a man of marriage, whatever you're going to try to achieve, you're probably going to have a lot that you will need to have resilience for. The Democratic Party did everything they could to take him off the ballots, sued him everywhere. He had to get over 1 million signatures, took 16 months, and he did something nobody else has done. We'll get to that in a minute. He did the impossible. He could have quit, but he went on. What is that manly virtue? Resilience. As again, through his campaign, he went against the establishment. What? It often cost a hero something. I think he's now in a $10 million lawsuit brought by the DNC. The DNC are the bad guys here, for sure. Neither party's perfect, by the way. But the DNC, look at the lawsuits for Trump, the lawsuits for him, and the legal attacks, and look how much fraud they're going to pull. We think maybe, right? Possibly that they could do. So they threw everything they could at him, and he kept going. He went on. He never gave in. He kept going. They attacked him personally. His own family attacked him personally. And this lawfare is big, right? If you're a normal person and you don't have millions and millions of dollars, what are you going to do when they come at you? It's really to be concerned. It's not about Trump, Kennedy. Think about you and when they come at you. Remember the meme guy they threw in jail? The meme guy that did a meme about Hillary? That's scary. And we hear friends, people, men say they're not interested in politics or history or the Constitution. We better get interested because it's our country, not theirs. So I encourage you that you can have an impact and make a difference. Now, why did he get involved? For the border, for censorship? He believes in free speech and the border, that we need a border, that we need to be a nation. And they agreed on those things, and some things they didn't agree on, unity, coming together. And if they can come together, we can all come together on the freedom side. Now, he could have gotten bitter and gone home, but he didn't. He went on. Bobby Kennedy then could have said, well, I have no path to the presidency. But look what he did. Instead of whining or complaining or not going on, he allied now with Trump, where he can have an impact and make a difference in a cabinet position. He wanted to be president. He put himself aside. He put his party aside for country first. So let's take a look at this clip and this incredible speech by Bobby Kennedy.
I'm sorry to keep everybody waiting. 16 months ago, in April of 2023, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent. The mainstream of American politics and journalism derided my decision. Conventional wisdom said that it would be impossible even to get on the ballot as an independent because each state poses an insurmountable tangle of arbitrary rules for collecting signatures. I would need over 1 million signatures, something no presidential candidate in history had ever achieved.
Once again, he had the Kennedy name, money, and everything he needed. But again, they wanted Joe, who was in cognitive decline, and they put him in. And they did not give Bobby Kennedy a chance because they did not want a real challenger. They did not want to have a vote or a primary while they talk democracy, democracy, democracy. They don't want a democratic process. And they always say they want democracy. Like I said before, acting as if they want a pure democracy. They don't even want a democracy. They want a neo-feudal system, it seems, allegedly. And extremely corrupt. It's more than dirty politics. They did not want a primary. So it seems like that was very corrupt the way they treated Bobby Kennedy. So he's worried about censorship, free speech, the Constitution. He said his party used to stand for the Constitution, not authoritarianism. They were against unjust wars and censorship, and now they're for war. So you have a whole neocon section of both parties that are for wars. They're war crazy for the military-industrial complex. That's a problem in both parties. Trump was not a neocon, and it has cost him. Because you see the attack by the Republican establishment on Trump because he's not a neocon and he wants to wrap up Ukraine. Remember, all the Republicans voted for that crazy Ukraine spending. Almost all the Republicans, almost everyone. I think Rand Paul did, and a few, Thomas Massie and a few others. But I mean, the majority of Republicans voted for it. But anyway, he says they needed to be a party of working class. We talk about all this time. Republicans need to be the party of the working class and citizens. We need to help our citizens. Look what they're doing in California, giving out home loans to illegals, illegal immigrants. So we talked about government transparency. There's not even transparency in the Democratic Party. It seems like bulwark against corporate power. He thought it was the party of democracy as well. And he says they've left their values, their core values. They've now become the party of big tech, big government, big money. No, I don't think he said big government. That's more my word. But big money, big tech, censorship, and the party of war. They abandoned democracy, he says, by canceling the primary. So, and you've got Trump, who's an outsider as well, and Kennedy, who's bucked the establishment. Trump's bucking the establishment because, as you saw, both parties really funded a Ukraine war. But Kennedy and Trump are aligned that they both want to get out of the Ukraine war and get that war ended. Next clip.
And then I'd need a team of attorneys and millions of dollars to handle all the legal challenges from the DNC. The naysayers told us that we were climbing a glass version of Mount Impossible. So the first thing I want to tell you is that we proved them wrong. We did it because beneath the radar of mainstream media organs, we inspired a massive independent political movement. More than 100,000 volunteers sprang into action, hopeful that they could reverse our nation's decline. Many worked 10-hour days, sometimes in blizzards and blazing heat. They sacrificed family time, personal commitments, and sleep month after month, energized by a shared vision of a nation healed of its divisions. They set up tables at churches and farmers' markets. They canvassed door to door. In Utah and in New Hampshire, volunteers collected signatures in snowstorms.
So this is a huge lesson for you men. They said it was impossible, but they did it. He did it and the volunteers. And I like in this clip how he has such gratitude for you, if you're volunteers out there watching, and the volunteers. See, he's a great leader because he doesn't just talk about himself here. He talks about his volunteers. And he tells personal stories about the volunteers. And that's a great leader. And he's grateful for them. And here's the big point for men. People are going to tell you in life, you can't do this, you can't do that, and maybe even your own parents and your friends, but you can do it probably. If it's the right goal, you can at least attempt it. And many things you can do that they say you can't. They said this was impossible. They had to get over 1 million signatures. They had to deal with all the different states' regulations and the Democratic National Convention suing them, the NC, suing them, like Trump was going through lawsuits. Yet they carried on, and Kennedy kept going, even though his family was opposed to him doing this. His family was protecting the Kennedy legacy, but he, like a man should be, stood for ideas and ideas and country above party. He stood for ideas and country above party. That's rare, right? That's a hero. Resilience, he had it. He had a big why. His campaign was about ideas and having an impact and making a difference. And you men, if you get a big why and you can have an impact and make a difference, I think it will help motivate you. He had a purpose larger than himself. It wasn't just about himself. And imagine having to go up against your family and the party and the establishment. He did that. That takes a lot of courage. So there's a lot of manly virtues that you can take from Bobby Kennedy. He's way off the narrative of the corporate message. He's not talking about what the military-industrial complex wants, or the big pharma industrial complex wants, or the food industrial complex. He knew making the decision that he would be attacked, and he went on anyway. That's what a hero does. You make a difficult decision knowing you're going to be attacked, and you go on. So let's say hats off to all the volunteers and the people, and know this, what can you learn from this? Those volunteers, they had an impact and made a difference. It wasn't just Bobby Kennedy. It took all those volunteers. One guy lost 25 pounds walking in the heat in Arizona, he talks about in the story. And they did it in the cold. And they got on the ballot, with the Democrats also suing them all the way through, trying to prevent democracy, right? And he talks about sacrifice in life. You men, for your love or for your business or for your country, will have to probably sacrifice at some point. Sacrifice is something we don't talk about, like wisdom a lot. We're not going to go into wisdom, but sacrifice is a word that we don't talk about a lot. But to have a big why, if you have a big why, you can take the sacrifice. You can make the sacrifice. And he had to face the media too, right? Because he's not on the narrative. So great leaders talk about their people, not just themselves. And he did that right here, talks about his volunteers and how grateful he is for them. So this shows you can have an impact like these volunteers and Bobby Kennedy in your life. You just have to make a choice and a decision and do it. Some people say don't bother voting today. Imagine if these volunteers had had that saying, well, it's impossible, the Democrats are against us, the establishment's against us, we're not going to have an impact. But they didn't do that. They went on, and these volunteers had an impact and made a difference, and you can too. And Trump and Kennedy came together and put aside their differences, unity, and you can too. And they spoke about ideas. In this speech, it's laden with ideas. Another manly virtue, gratitude. He has so much gratitude for these volunteers, and he constantly gives them credit. And all these people came together. He talks about senior citizens, because this is not about generations or race. It's about all the people who want freedom to come together from 18 to 95. Because your age and color does not matter. It's whether you believe and want to move more toward freedom or keep moving toward tyranny. Now, the powers that be try to divide in race, color, and generation. But we don't have to buy into that. We can all get together for freedom on the freedom side. So when someone tells you don't vote, you can't have an impact, know these volunteers already had an impact, and you can. If you like our message, we would really appreciate it if you'd like, comment, and subscribe.